Afternoon, Chris. Thanks for joining us this month. It's a new month, and I'm sure new issues out there in the world markets.
Always is. August is always an exciting month, but let's face it, July's been very good as well in terms of lots of stuff happening. UK market was quite good. UK bonds made a bit of profit as well. So for UK investors, it's actually been quite a good last month. And let's face it, it's been a fabulous last 6 or 7 months to make 2021 so far. It's been a very, very good time to be an investor. But as always, challenges are about what happens next. It's not what's already gone, it's about thinking about the future. And the really good news is that, let's face it, the world is still getting a little bit better. Yes, it's still difficult. Yes, unfortunately, COVID-19 is still something we all have to carefully think about. But as you can see by day-to-day life, being able to go on holiday, to visit friends and family and related, fortunately, life is getting a little bit more normal. And that is always taken well by the markets.
Yeah, absolutely. On one of the points there then, Chris, if we look at, the UK's had a relatively good year. Where else do you think's been good this year so far?
Well, I think the surprise has probably been Europe, in the sense that, no longer is the UK part of Europe, I guess, after Brexit and everything else. But Europe's actually performed very well too. And I think really for two reasons. One is that there's been obviously some good progress in terms of their fighting of vaccines and everything, making sure that's gone okay. And there's been a big catch up by Europe in terms of applying the vaccination efforts. But you've also seen a realization by global investors that Europe is still very cheap. And a bit like the UK, a bit like the concerns because of Brexit and uncertainty, you've seen recovery in those markets in the last few months. The other market that's done better than I thought it would have done is America. Now, America doing well is no great surprise. Let's face it, they've had a fabulous last 10 or 12 years. But I personally thought that America would be a bit duller this year because it's had all its great years already. It needs a bit of catch up from Europe and the UK and other areas. But America also has provided pretty good performance for people. And the dollar has even been a little bit stronger in the last couple of months than even I thought it would have been. So I think America and Europe have been the two surprises really of this year. The UK performing well has been no great surprise. I think we could all figure out that actually the UK is actually a pretty good place to be invested. By contrast, unfortunately, Asia has been a bit disappointing really, and China has seen some volatility in their markets over the last month or two. The Chinese government has always had their own views on life. They change matters a little bit, but ultimately, do I still think that China and Asia is still a fantastic place to be invested in for anybody with a medium-term view over the next few years? My absolute thought is still yes, because still what you're seeing is the Asian markets becoming bigger and bigger, more people becoming wealthier there, being invested there. It's still a core place for people thinking about future growth over the next few years. So for me, I still like the Asian investment opportunities, and that obviously includes China at the core of it.
Great. Let's talk about issues, because we can't be too positive, Chris, in the world of markets. We've seen inflation fears. We've seen central banks discussing interest rates. Should we, shouldn't we? What do you think are the big challenges going into this month and beyond?
Undoubtedly, inflation is the big concern. Why? Because we all know that a little bit of inflation is what we all expect normally. And let's face it, our personal rates of inflation, what we feel in our day-to-day lives, we know that there's a bit of inflation out there. Everything costs a little bit more, be it food, obviously houses, but just day-to-day life generally. But what you've got in financial markets at the moment is this amazing backdrop of very low interest rates, very low bond yields, and it seems that the Bank of England or the banks themselves are quite comfortable with that backdrop. But the reality is a little bit of inflation starts to change things a bit. And that's my feeling over the next year. What we'll see is the banks realizing that inflation is going up, the Bank of England realizing it as well, among other central banks around the world. And as a consequence, you'll see bond yields starting to go up a little bit. Now, is that a big problem? No. To me, it would be a reflection of the fact that the economy is starting to recover a little bit as well. But of course, if interest rates go up and you see that happening in markets, that changes things a little bit. And so what that will mean is that you have to become a bit more careful as an investor. It means that unlike what we've seen over the last 10 or 12 years, or especially over the last 6 or 7 months, everything going really well, everything's seemingly making money. The future is going to be a bit trickier in the sense that a little bit of rising inflation will cause a few challenges. Is it impossible? Absolutely not, because we can all see the day-to-day reality in our own lives. If the Bank of England is basically still having quite a low bank rate, if your bank has a low interest rate, unfortunately, it's not going to make much sense holding a lot of cash in your bank, because it's not going to make you much money at all, unfortunately, especially if there's a bit of inflation. So that's why still the investment world, particularly based on shares, but also with some other bonds and other investments out there, makes a lot more sense for people, for their pension funds and for their long-term investment opportunities. So that would still be my view. There's still great opportunity there, but you've just got to realise that a little bit of inflation does change things a little bit.
Great, thanks, Chris. Good recap again for the month. And I'm sure we'll have new things to talk about in September as we enter in towards the final quarter of the year, which I'm sure will be exciting.
Absolutely. Well, it's exciting times always. September's always an interesting month, but as you say, it's really running up towards Christmas and thinking about next year. The investment world, I'm afraid, is always active. It's never quiet.